Hi there, my name is Gabriel. I am also known as the Finance Catalyst. Welcome to Fintacts podcast, a podcast that is geared towards your financial well-being. On this podcast, we always talk about things that are very important to you financially, when it comes to your personal finance. It could be the areas of investment, it could be the areas of savings, whatever you may want to talk about when it comes to your personal finance. This podcast is always geared towards giving you such information. So on today's episode, it's a special episode. I want to be sharing with you something that I consider very, very important. It's called the 5 financial questions to ask before marriage. So many people don't actually talk about the areas of finances when it comes to marriage. Of course, you might be wondering why I must have raised this issue up. It's because it's important. It's because it's very, very important. When you're about to get married, it's always important to ask yourself some very, very important financial questions. And so on this episode, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 financial questions to ask before marriage. Money may not be the most romantic topic of conversations for couples that are actually about to get married. It might not just necessarily be the most romantic topic of conversation or discussion, but the way a couple approaches it can be a very strong predictor of the marriage's long-term success. It's very important to take note of this. Several studies have actually found that money is a top cause of stress in relationships. We've had several studies about that. But finances don't have to cause friction for you and your soon-to-be spouse. It's always important to discuss your finances upfront before marriage. It's always important to have this discussion because it's vital, it's important to the long-term health of your marriage. Learning how to talk about money before you even get married can be a key to developing that financial confidence in your own relationship. So it's very, very important to take this into consideration. So you might want to ask, how do I talk about money before getting married? So I'm going to share with you now some questions, about 5 of them, that you should always ask your soon-to-be spouse. It could be your fiancé. You guys have to come to a place where you have to be open about your financial situation. So number 1, when it comes to the questions you want to ask, is you have to ask your spouse, do you guys, in fact, the both of you have to ask yourself, do you understand your debts, your assets, and your expenses? You have to understand your debts, your assets, and your expenses, in the sense that you have to know how much debt your spouse already has. If he has a debt incurred somewhere before even getting into the marriage, you have to understand the kind of assets that he has and also the kind of expenses that he incurs. These questions are very, very important. One helpful way to talk about money before marriage is to sit down as a couple and take inventory of all the debts and the assets you each are bringing into your long-term financial commitments. It's very, very important to take note of this. It could include these areas could include maybe loans that your spouse may have taken, maybe as a student, or maybe a mortgage loan, or if he has savings that he has been saving for several courses. It's always important now to be transparent and open to yourselves, to each other, because you guys are having a long-term financial commitment. So the both of you have to have an idea of your current financial situation. So understanding the debts, the assets, and the kind of expense you incur as individuals before you get into that marriage is very, very important. Number 2, you have to also ask yourself, are you guys going to be having a joint account or a separate bank account when you get into the marriage? This is very, very, very important. Another way to talk about money before marriage is to consider whether you want to combine your bank accounts or you want to have separate bank accounts. There are people who I know of that would say to me, we plan to have 3 bank accounts. One can be for me as an individual. The other one can be for my spouse. It could be my wife as an individual. And then we have another one, which is a joint one that we could use for several other activities, like expenses that are incurred in the home, things like this. So whichever works for you. It's very, very important to be intentional about this before you even get married. You need to know what kind of structure financially, when it comes to your bank accounts, you want to have. It's very, very important to pay attention to this. It's important, because once you have, the both of you have come to a consensus, and you have a plan on how this is going to be executed, it saves you a lot of financial stress. You already know where the monies are coming from, and where the monies are going to be ending up in. So it's important to always have a special account for yourselves. Have the discussion, know exactly where you want to, what you guys want to do when it comes to the area of your bank accounts, and then you take off from there. Very, very important. Number 3, you have to also ask yourself the honest question: how has money impacted your upbringing? So many people don't talk about this because they feel like it's not worth talking about. When deciding how to talk about money before you get married, consider having open discussions. It's always important. Open discussions about how your parents handled money, including what you think they did well and what you think they could have done better. These are things you guys have to have an open conversation with, and how this has influenced your own financial expectations and goals. This is a valuable point. You have to always look at this. Most times people tend to overlook things like this, components of how to talk about money before they get married, and that's why you see them getting into so many financial crises when they are in the marriage. So it's always important, talk about your upbringing with money. How has money been with you? How has your money spending habit been all the time you were growing up? Have this open and transparent discussion with your spouse. It's very, very important. You have to understand that if you are someone that you grew up vacationing at stores, chances that you might want to aspire to own a shore house as an adult. You might want to do things that are more luxury, but these are things you can have in terms of conversation with your spouse. You guys have to come to a sort of working compromise, in the sense that you guys understand your upbringing and your psychology around money. It's very, very important to take note about this area. Number 4 is also very important. You guys have to ask yourself, how could your financial dynamic shift over time? How could your financial dynamic shift over time? Your financial situation today might not significantly be may be significantly different from your financial situation tomorrow. While it's impossible to predict exactly what the future holds for your finances and your lifestyle, there are ways to talk about money before marriage to lay the groundwork for your decisions. It's very, very important. Because you might ultimately be faced with several financial decisions in the future as a couple. So if you plan to have children, for example, you may want to discuss how career and financial priorities might shift, with both spouses also maintaining their working arrangements. Will someone want to pick up more of work or a scale back? You have to decide, is one person going to be more of the working person and the other person more of, taking a step back to look after the home and manage it and manage the home? It's important because you have to understand your financial dynamic. How is it going to be? Are the both of you going to be someone that is going to be working, or one person is more of a business inclined person, as an entrepreneur, and the other person is more of a salary employer, like someone that works for a company, a salary employee rather. So it's important to always know which dynamic you want to take, because this will also help you in terms of managing the finances in the home. It's always very, very important to understand these areas. You really want to save for your children's college education, or what's the plan, for your parents, your aging parents that might not necessarily have the ability to do something that will just be relying on you, to take care of them. These are things you have to also think about. It's always very important. So when you are planning on getting married, these are areas you have to sit down and discuss with your spouse. How will your financial dynamic shift over time? Because it might be that before you get married to your spouse, you might have a certain dynamic of your finances, but now that you guys are not coming together, it might have to be adjusted, to suit the both of you very well. So it's always important to sit down and talk about these areas as well. So number 5, which is the final point, is a final question that you will always also want to discuss with your spouse, is when you guys sit down, you always regularly have to talk about finances. It's very, very important. Why determining how to talk about money before you get married? It's important. It's an important milestone, to have ongoing communication, about your finances. It's very, very necessary, because when you have constructive discussion, it helps you to have a clear weekly money dialogue. Why you can, the both of you can listen to several financial podcasts, listening to important financial podcasts. You could also read very, very important financial books, and choose to meet frequently, to talk about your financial plans, financial plans that are very, very sustainable. This signals to your partner that your finances are important. When you start talking about things like this, it signals to them that yes, indeed, you guys pay close attention to your finances. You guys have to come together and set joint objectives about your finances. How can you make your finance even better? How can you grow your finance? How can you, as a couple, in the long run, grow your finances to a level that you have multiple streams of income? These are areas that is very important. Is very, very key to take note of this. So having said all this, I want to leave you with this quote from Ginter Wall. He was the co-founder of a non-profit organization focused on financial health, women's financial health. He says, an open dialogue that ensures that there will be no surprises about money or any other topics for the matter is important for a great relationship. So it's important that you have an open dialogue, a transparent dialogue with your spouse or your fiancé that you're about getting married to. This is something that you shouldn't take for granted, because like I said earlier in this podcast episode, while I was sharing, so many researchers have come out. It has been said that most marriages have financial stress because of the fact that they didn't have the right plan in place, or they didn't ensure to make the right financial plan, or have discussions amongst themselves that could have resulted in a better financial organization. So it's very, very important that you follow these 5 points. I'm going to list these 5 questions again for you. The first one is actually asking your spouse about the debts and the assets and the expenses that they incur, before even getting into the marriage. The second one, I talked about having either a joint or a separate bank account. It depends on the both of you, but you have to ask yourself the question: do you want to have a joint bank account, or do you want to have a separate bank account? It's whatever works for you. That's what is very important. Number 3, I talked about the question, asking your spouse, how has money impacted your upbringing? How has money impacted your upbringing? And number 4, I talked about how could your financial dynamic shift over time. You have to ask your spouse these questions. You have to be open, having this open discussion with your spouse. And the final point was, talking about your finances regularly. Talking about your finances regularly. You ask your spouse, how often do you sit down to talk about your finances? to talk about your finance regularly. These are questions that you should be asking your spouse before you even start making plans to get married. Very, very important. So thank you so much. I believe this episodes or this special episode has been very beneficial to you. I would like to hear from you. If you have any question that is also in relation to your personal finance, it could be any area, any subject matter in the area of personal finance that you would like to get more information about, you can always reach out to me. You can also visit the website, the Fintacts Academy website, www.fintactsacademy.com. There you have exclusive access to other of my podcast episodes that I've shared cutting across several financial subject matters that I believe will be of much benefit and much help to you and to your personal finance. So thank you for listening to this special episode of my podcast. Until I'll see you again in my next episode, I want you to always make sure that you're intentional about your finances. Don't always overlook your finances. Make sure that you're intentional. You always make the right financial decision for yourself, for your business, and for your family. Thanks for listening, and I will see you again soon.